Hello, everyone. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Kathy Liska with the Center for Coaching Certification and Coach 123.
Hi, I'm Pandora Ray. I'm also with the Center for Coaching Certification and Coach 123.
Awesome. Super excited today to have someone we've been working with for a while. Fabulous insights we're looking forward to out of this conversation. Somebody who has walked the walk and is now in a place to really have an impact with others on that journey. So welcome, Kris. Tell everybody about you.
Hi. Well, my name is Kris Liebau. I am the owner of Action and Ease Leadership Coaching, and I started out in engineering. I was in engineering for about 20 years, and what I found in that time is got my engineering brain. I'm problem solver, and I'm going to solve the world's problems with facts and data. And as I progressed in my career, I found that it isn't all about facts and data. And I started to, as much as I thought I was a people person, I started to get more intrigued by the challenges like within the organization and getting things done and how our mindset impacts what's going on. So we're focused and our goals are around the products and the processes and the procedures of things, though a lot of times it's our internal mental process that has an impact on all of that other stuff. And that really became my point of fascination that's moved me into coaching. And I love working with, those people that have that problem solving mindset, the analytical side. They're some of my favorite. I love all my clients. They're some of my favorites. And I feel like they really kind of gravitate toward me because I've lived those experiences.
Yeah. So talk about analytical leaders in their own world.
Yeah, so I talk about how in the tools in your toolbox, there's a spectrum. So there's the analytical spreadsheets, flowcharts, which is one of my very happy places, and then at the far end of the spectrum, there's that being in the moment and dancing. And right, you and I say dancing, I feel kind of cringy about that. So when we have a really well developed side with the structure and problem solving and the logic type of stuff, we're missing opportunities on the other side that are right. They're helpful with empathy and building relationships and doing those things. Not that you can't do that with some of these. It's or that you don't have right some of these other skills. Sometimes it's how do we blend them together, looking at the engineering curiosity and the problem solving and doing those things. That's great, and that's what's made you right really successful in that space. How do we take that curiosity and apply it into the building relationships and problem solving things that don't plug into a wall and that type of stuff? So it's how do we build on what's good and set some expand on what you have.
Yeah, nice. So in thinking about this from the perspective of an organization who has analytical leaders, what are the indications for them that having a coach for that analytical leader is going to make sense?
Yeah, I would say, especially I can certainly speak from my experiences as well as those shared by my clients. And you know you I'm figuring things out. I'm smart. I can fix this. I can tackle that project. I can do those things, and I'm growing and I'm challenged and this is fun. And then it's like, oh, I need to communicate with these other departments and get buy-in so that this like great idea that I have can move forward, or this solution. And so it's talking about our ideas and gaining buy-in from others when we start to feel like we aren't having the same impact in what we're doing. We're just kind of spinning our wheels, or we get into that part where there's a lot going on, there's a lot of balls in the air, and it's difficult. It becomes more difficult to use some of those that analytical thinking process to really figure out what's the next logical step to move forward, right? In order to be able just to move move the day-to-day stuff forward, or in general, helping out your team and supporting and moving ideas forward.
Can you provide an analogy kind of what you're thinking about in terms of that? Sort of paint us a picture.
Yeah. So one of the pieces of imagery that we talk about a lot is this concept of the thought tornado, right? We've got lots of ideas and facts and we're planning, and there's a lot of details that are out there. And as we work to problem solve, sometimes they just start spinning and swirling. And it's easy to feel like you can get swept away with all the little details and all the things that you have to do. So how do we, right? Then in a tornado, right? It's picking up all this stuff off the ground and it's swirling around. Well, when it actually just settles down to the ground, we can go, oh, okay, there's a piece from over here and there's a piece from over there. So it's changing some of that perspective so we can have, rather than feeling swept up by it, we have a little bit more distance from it to be able to look at what's going on and really plan something forward rather than getting swept away by all the details and then just kind of like, okay, well, there's this other problem over here, I'm going to go work on that because I don't want to deal with the tornado today.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you talked earlier about that spectrum from the logical, analytical, okay, here we've got the process, we've got the facts, this is how we're going to answer it. And then the whole other side of the equation where it's more the relational, different personalities, etc. And so this swept up or tornado or dance, if you will, of these things is what you're talking about. So for that individual analytical leader, how do they really know that, hey, it makes sense for me to have a coach versus the idea of, hey, I've got the ability to process through this and figure this out?
Yeah, well, I would say, as you were saying that, the first word that really popped into my head was a little bit of a plateau.
Okay.
Right. Within that, it's like, I'm working, I'm doing these things. These are my, this is my, my technique, and I'm doing it and I'm doing it and I'm doing it. And right, I'm not making progress forward. So something, like if you, were had a, going to run a marathon or do something or fitness related, in the way that you would almost work with a personal trainer to help figure out like, what is it that I really need, right, to move forward and connect and get to where I want to go. A coach can help provide some of that perspective, figure out what are, right, because there's probably a lot of different things that you could do. It's what's the most valuable place to focus, because you can't, right, we can't do them all today. So putting together a bit more of a plan for what that looks like, moving forward to, right, to connect so you don't feel like you're spinning the wheels, that you start to get some of the traction you want.
Yeah. So how exactly does a coach partner with that analytical leader?
Yeah, one of the really valuable things is, right, it's that thought process, right? Analytical, we're really great at thinking, and we can think ourselves in circles and go around and around. So how can we, by partnering and asking those questions, right, instead of being in that loop, it starts to be like, oh, okay. So even though working with a coach, right, it's not from A to B, rather than sitting here and spinning, it's like, okay, let's go, you start to get into that where we're making progress towards where we want to be with those questions. Um, challenging some of those assumptions or mindsets that we have about stuff that keep us locked in. So there's opportunities to brainstorm and ask those things, because I don't want, and I don't need to know all the details of the office politics or those specific people in order to ask those questions to help, right, to help you come up with new, fresh ideas to make the change.
It's fascinating. You've mentioned some really powerful words here, like mindset, focus, perspective, dancing, being present. missed opportunities, relationships, empathy. And yet you've also mentioned process and procedure and analytical capability and tools and those kinds of things. It really sounds like sort of a progression toward change. How does that hit with you?
Yeah. Wow, I'm impressed. Those are great notes, Pan. Love it. Yeah. So with that, I see coaching as it's about fine tuning. I look at it like, back in the VHS days, how you had to adjust the tracking to get the image more clear. I see coaching in that way as well, because we're not about reinventing anything. We're not, there's nothing wrong with any of the clients I work with. It's how do we fine tune the most valuable things in order to get that clearer picture and start to move stuff forward. And so there's no one way to do that. Every person has different strengths and challenges. And so it's really about, right, taking all the beautifulness of all this stuff and what's going on, right, to make that adjustment.
So, sometimes we see an organization saying, okay, we want to have a coach for this individual. Whether they want support and, okay, what's the challenge for their success? How do we optimize their performance? How do we develop them as a leader? Whatever it is, their motivation. And then that leader themselves may or may not be buying into this idea of having a coach. What's important for them to know in terms of reasons for having that coach?
For the coach themselves, or the coach
For the
themselves, for the
client.
client themselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, a big part. So there's really a trust aspect
Mhm.
to this too. And so, I think I'm going to step back a little bit before I go answer the question. And, that analytical mindset, we're problem solvers, we fix things, we do things, right? That kind of stuff. Like there's a problem, we go fix it.
Mhm.
So when somebody comes forth and says, hey, I have this idea, or have you thought about this? What's your interest in working with a coach? When we're always in this, I fix problems type of thing, right? We can automatically go to they think I need to be fixed. Okay.
Mm.
And that's not what coaching is about. It's more about having a resource, having a partner to find that clarity. It's a friend to phone that, right, doesn't have all, all the weight that you're carrying on your shoulders and the stuff in your backpack, to talk that through, because it's not about I think the other misconception too is they think, oh, well, like a coach is going to go tell me what to do.
Mm.
I don't tell my clients what they need to do. We talk about what's important, what's the plan to get there, what's the benefit of that? Like, oh, this didn't work before. Okay, well, what didn't work about it? What lessons can we learn? And how do we move those things forward? So I think not coach doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. So it's really important to talk about that this is a partnership. This is a resource that we want to offer to you. And additionally, in that coaching relation, confidentiality is a big thing. It's a part of the International Coaching Federation's Code of Ethics. And it's something that my clients find incredibly valuable, because sometimes there's challenges that we have and we want help with them, but we don't want to go to our boss and point it out. We're having a challenge in a particular area.
Mhm.
So it's great to be able to work with somebody who's independent to sometimes say that stuff out loud. I get that from my clients all the time. Oh, wow, man, I've never really said that out loud before. And then that creates that opportunity to start thinking and making progress and overcoming some of those challenges.
Yeah. So talk more about the roles and responsibilities of the analytical leader and their coach's partner. What is each of them doing in that engagement?
Yeah. So I'll get the, people will say, oh, I'm not prepared for my session today, or how do I prepare, for my first session? Because they want to come in, they want to have a plan. And right, it can go a multitude of ways. Some people come in and they're like, this is my challenge. This is what we're going to talk about today. This is what I want to walk away with. Right. So you can come in with a plan. We can say, okay, great. It's like, where do we need to go? What resources do you need? And so it's an opportunity to really partner, focus, poke holes, brainstorm, that type of a thing. Sometimes I have clients that come in that, right, they're like, I don't really know what's going on. I just gotta, right, it's the thought tornado, just whatever, the stuff's hit the fan, there's a lot going on. And the results of some of those conversations, so right, they're sharing, this is what's going on. My responsibility, doing a lot of the listening, I'm asking questions. I might say, may I share an observation about something? Like, I'm seeing, you're mentioning this and this. How are those things related? And in doing that, sometimes the outcome of a session is really walking away with a really solid problem statement. In defining, what that challenge is, that's really empowering to know, be like, okay, this is the thing I need to focus on, and now I need to go do that. So coaches are doing a lot of listening and asking those questions. We ask clients to come, right, share the information, be willing to partner. I always ask people, say, I need your permission to challenge you from time to time, and right, to break into some new ideas.
New ideas. I would be remiss without saying the W. Edwards Deming quote that change, it's not necessary to change, that survival isn't a necessity. Sort of the great engineering quote of all time. How does that fall on your ears?
I was going to say, I am familiar with Deming, not the quote. Would you repeat it for me, please?
Necessary to change, survival isn't mandatory.
It's necessary to change, but survival isn't mandatory.
It isn't necessary to change.
Oh,
Survival.
okay.
So kind of drawing a parallel between change and survival.
Yeah. So, one of the, okay. So when you say that, what that brings to mind is like, I've developed my system and my process, and I know my strengths, and this is how I do it. And I love being on autopilot because, right, I don't have to think as hard, and it's easier. And when somebody, right, throws a wrench into that, you're like, oh, right. It's like, oh, the process doesn't work. I got to change my process. Oh, I put so much work into making this thing. How do I make it fit into this process that I have? Because this is how I like to do it. Right. And when there's that resistance to change, and that's kind of the whole like flowchart dance. Right, side of stuff that, right, we need to connect and read what's going on around us, and not hold, be attached to certain things with a death grip, because even though we may have loved them, they may have served us well, they may not be serving us now, in that, we can't make it fit into that. The glass slipper doesn't work for this scenario. So you can survive, like you can do that, and you can hustle, and you can do the thing. The question is how hard do you want to work on that? In There's I guess this is Buddhist or whatnot, but it says suffering equals pain times resistance. So the only thing that we really have control over in that, right, it's that resistance, right? And that's that change part, right? We're going to have, there's going to be pain, but how much do we want to resist that? How much do we want to push on it? So how do we learn to dance? How do we learn to update the flow chart? How do we embrace that side of stuff so that it's not right, it's not so much of an insult to who we are when we need to change, in that way.
It sounds like, to be true to your company's name, Action Ease is part of a coaching relationship.
Yeah, I was going to say quick, really kind of funny story about where that came with, right? So I'm definitely, I am that analytical, whatever person. I was like hung up and hung up and hung up. And I'm like, well, I'm like, what am I doing with my clients and this kind of stuff? And it's like, right. When we connect with with that valuable action, there's that sense of ease that follows. We build momentum. We get things go, right? The flywheel is spinning. And so I come up with this name, and I happen to have another engineering coach friend, and I bounce it off of her, and she goes, well, how about you take your action and find your ease? Right. I was like, like, she's like, just do it. Cause that was what I had come up with. I'm like, yes. And that honestly is, my clients do that all the time. They'll be in a session. You're like, oh man, they're like, I get it now. I get it.
It's these two words keep popping into my head: dexterity and nimbleness.
Ooh.
So between the process and then the going with the VUCA reality of what's happening, that wrench in the works, if you will. So you're partnering with that analytical leader so that they're truly developing their own dexterity and nimbleness for moving from their process to flexing with whatever wrench has been thrown in the works.
Yeah. When you say that, the word resilience comes to mind.
Yeah. Nice.
Right. And that's that aspect of, right, how nicely do we switch from plan A to plan D within that? You know, what impact do we allow that to have on ourselves? Right. And how does that impact our happiness, our satisfaction, our effectiveness, all that? Yeah. Great words, Kathy.
Just based on what you're saying. So, you know, of course, you got to protect confidentiality and that kind of thing. Some sort of an example of how you as coach partnering with that analytical leader really supported them developing that kind of flexibility.
Yeah. I worked with a client that had about, I don't know, there was probably about 60 people within her organization. And she said, well, I have an open door policy for those people. And I really want them to come and share and have these conversations. She says, and she goes, nobody takes me up on it. I said, okay, all right, right. We can work toward this. And so we, talking about team dynamics and those types of things. And she's, there was a comment that was made that she goes, well, I don't feel like I have to throw everybody a parade because they're meeting my expectations. I said, okay, fair enough. Right. I get you. Right. I get that. Right. We're not all participation trophy people. That's fine. How do people know that they're meeting your expectations? Right. And it got quiet. Oh, okay. So we found an opportunity that, here she is saying, like, she does appreciate what people, like, all this stuff is going on, and she really does do that. However, that wasn't coming across in what she was doing. She wasn't communicating that well. So we explored what felt right for her. Well, first of all, what was something that she wanted to do that wasn't going to be right pulling teeth, and what's helpful, how do people in her organization want to be recognized, what works well for her team, to find something that works for her, that works for them, that helps move toward the goal of what she's looking for, to build that relationship and connection.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Lovely.
Awesome example. Yeah. So, well, it's kind of funny. Here's what just popped into my head was asking you for your advice for organizations and analytical leaders. And then I'm like, wait a minute, coaches don't give advice. So can't ask that question.
Yeah.
What's a takeaway out of this conversation that you want organizations and analytical leaders to gain?
So a big part of this is, right, so I'm going to say, you don't have to do it on your own. And I mean that twofold. I mean that one, for that actual leader of, you can partner with people. Partnering with somebody doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It's an opportunity, right, to get that resource, to have that phone a friend type of a thing, to get the ball, to establish some of that momentum forward again, right? Sometimes we lose steam and it's really difficult to pick back up and move forward with that. So from that side, I will say organizationally, when you see people that want to move forward in their career, that, it doesn't necessarily, don't have to have a specific career path in mind, though, they want professional development, they want to grow, and they're at a point where it's not like, oh, we'll go take this class on this software type of thing, right? We get to a certain point where it's like, is a class on like time management really going to help? Like, what about delegation, right? It's not. Here's the thing, right? A lot of the analytical, they're smart. They understand all these concepts. Don't, like they don't want to go sit in training. You're like, man, you don't want to pay to go put them in training for this thing, right? Coaching is about how do we integrate those things into what's going on, right? Like, let's take what you know and help put it into action so that you can find some of the ease and the benefits of using those knowledge and skills, because it's hard, right? When that VUCA world, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to go try something new. I'm just hoping that I don't fall in the lake. So again, being strategic and moving forward. So it's a really great opportunity to help people kind of optimize a little bit of where they're at, to build effectiveness, capacity, and relationships.
So I'm imagining you that analytical leaders on that plateau that you talked about, and now you're going to walk alongside them as they go across the plateau and identify all the things they've accomplished, some of the takeaways, the insights from that, and then support the strategy for how they begin the climb up to the next level.
Yeah. And you talked about the celebrating the success portion too. When you're really like, we're like, the problem solvers are like, what's the next problem? Like taking that time to be like, I did that.
Yeah.
Right. How are you going to celebrate success, and bringing past successes to life is a really important part about the coaching process and reestablishing some of that momentum.
Nice. Nice. What's coming up for you, Pan?
Yeah, today has been wonderful. What an illuminating moment for my day. So my gratitude to you for taking the time to lighten it up.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So Kris, tell everybody how they can find you.
Yeah. So my coaching website is actionandeasecoaching.com. I am on LinkedIn. So if this really resonates with you, go ahead, reach out, connect, and we'll take it from there.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And of course, both Pan and I can be found through the Center for Coaching Certification website at coachcert.com, and then also at coach-123.com. So very much appreciate the conversation, your time, fabulous insights, and thank you to everybody that's listening in, and looking forward to engaging with more of you. Make it a good one.